Hi, this is Huang Zhenyu, and welcome to another episode of China 411. Today we're going to talk about the future of entrepreneurship. Ken?
Well, thank you. All right, I want to introduce our guest. We have a really great guest today, Rebecca,
Hi.
Mom. And Rebecca is an entrepreneur. So, Rebecca, why don't we start out with just a couple of background questions in order to give the people that are watching today a little bit of a sense of your family and where you grew up and all that kind of stuff. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your childhood for a starter?
So I grew up in China for most of the time. I've only moved to the US about 2 years ago. And in China, I attended an international school where I went to school with children of different cultures and different international backgrounds. Recently, I moved to America, and I currently go to school in Menlo School in Atherton. And that's
So did you go to international school the whole time you were going to school? Because your English is fantastic, and it sounds like you've been speaking English forever.
Yeah, I went to international school for as long as I remember, probably from first grade. And over there they spoke English, and I did take a Chinese elective along the way and also a French elective, but the primary language spoken there was English.
So. Yeah, how's your French?
It's all right. I wouldn't count on it.
And your Chinese? How's your Chinese?
I can speak it and read it. I'm not that good at writing it.
Yeah. Well, even Chinese people today, or Chinese children, are struggling with writing, I think, today, because on the one hand, it requires a huge amount of memorization. And on the other hand, people are starting to send text messages all the time. And when they do the text message thing, they don't have to write.
Right.
So it's harder to remember those characters. So what language did you start out with when you were just born? What did your parents speak?
When I was just born, I started out with Chinese. And my parents spoke both languages at home, but mostly everything was in Chinese. But then later on, we kind of shifted, and now most of us speak English at home.
The whole family?
Yeah, the whole family.
That is interesting.
So you're 18 years old.
Yes.
And you have these two very exciting things happening in your life. Going to college and starting the business.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about both.
So I'm a senior in high school right now, and there's kind of a lot of stress for college applications. That I can say is like my academic part, but more for like my entrepreneur endeavors. Like last summer, I started my own startup called StudyPal, and what this does is an online peer tutoring system, and it's for students who are late at night and they're kind of at a dilemma whether they should put this work off to the next morning, ask a friend, ask a teacher, ask their parents, or ask the internet. But often, like I've been in this position before, my friends also have been in this position where they just can't find any help. And so what StudyPal does is it essentially connects you with peers around the world who are taking your course or have taken your course, because a lot of the courses are standardized these days. And it connects these two peers, and basically they can help each other through collaborative learning and also through like a voice call mechanism on the platform.
So what made you want to start this?
So actually it was the problem because I was receiving texts for bio help or math help at 11 or 12 at midnight, and I just found that this was a huge problem for high schoolers nowadays because a lot of us tend to procrastinate. It isn't ideal, but...
That's not new, by the way.
Yeah, it isn't ideal.
You know, we still do that.
Yeah, but, it's not ideal, but I guess this is a tool to help kids who are in that position and in like emergency academic situations to get help right away.
So you're at the Menlo School, is that right?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty difficult school, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How would you just tell us a little bit about the Menlo School? What's it like?
So I actually transferred in during sophomore year. So far, I really love it because Menlo's a small school and it promotes it promotes different many different interests. We have so many computer programmers. We also have so many artists and athletes. Everybody has their like quirky side and also their academic side, and I'd say overall the academics are more challenging than I experienced in Beijing. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Then again, I went to international school, so not the local Beijing schools.
Are the international schools in China easier than the Chinese schools, or?
The math is definitely easier. I would say.
You'd say.
Yeah.
So how's the business going?
It's going pretty good. Last summer, we got our first funding from CI Venture Capitalist. Last summer, I was in Beijing, and I also further developed the product, and I worked on it with a fellow programmer who's kind of my co-founder now, and she helps me design a lot of the program while I do a lot of the Photoshop and design of the website and the marketing aspect of it.
Is it launched yet?
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's still it's launched, but we're still testing it out because we can still find glitches like every other day, and we're fixing them.
So how do you balance, starting a business, which is time-consuming and all-consuming, with academics?
Well, sometimes it gets hard, especially during finals, and I just have to prioritize better, I guess, and procrastinate less. And I guess during finals week, for example, I would probably prioritize academics a lot over my entrepreneur, like study pal, but over the summer, over breaks, and also on the weekends, whenever I have time, I work on study pal.
Interesting. In the circles of education, there's a lot of people who say that the Chinese system trains you to be better, analytically, mathematically, but not as creatively. How do you feel about that? And a lot of people say that, there may be less entrepreneurs that grow out of the Chinese system versus the American system. Like, as somebody who's going through the American system today, but having had experience in China, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like a lot of your peers are equally innovative and creative, or do you feel like they're different?
Well, my peers in Beijing are certainly different from my peers over here. And that's one of the reasons that prompted me to move here in the first place, is because I felt like my creativity wasn't as promoted there, because most of what we did in school was based off of memorization. And although this might be challenging, I didn't think it was exactly the type of education I was looking for. So it all started in 2012 when I went to summer camp here in Stanford, and I saw how creative and how innovative and how curious the students were in the classroom, and I just decided I didn't really want the education I had in Beijing, and I decided to move here. And certainly students here are a lot different. They're more outgoing in the classroom, they ask more questions, and they tend to help each other. They value teamwork over individual competition and competing with each other, that sort of thing. Yeah.
But the Chinese students in China are better at math and science, do you think?
I think so.
You think so?
Yes.
Interesting. So I'm really curious, when you made this decision a couple of years ago, a few years ago, after the summer camp at Stanford, you must have talked to your parents about that a little bit, and how'd they react? What did they think?
At first, they were not very supportive of it. I'd bring the conversation up, and sometimes they would kind of ignore it or move on to another topic. But after they realized I was serious, they were really supportive. But I went through the entire application process myself, because at that time they didn't think I was very serious. Not until I got accepted, they realized I was actually gonna seriously consider staying here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think their hesitation was at the beginning before they bought into it?
Well, first their hesitation was where am I gonna stay? Because they both work in Beijing, and if I were to move here, I don't really have as many relatives here besides my grandmother. And
Your grandmother lives here?
yeah, my grandmother has lived here for about more than 20 years.
Really? In Atherton? Or
In
where?
Palo Alto.
In Palo
yeah.
Alto. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
mean to interrupt.
no, it's fine. And so for finding me a place to live, and also they were just not sure that I was going to start a new life here all by myself, and found that they never thought I would come to the U.S. until I was going to college. But yeah.
So you actually moved here kind of on your own? The rest of the family stayed in Beijing?
I moved here on my own, and also with my little brother, who decided to come with me, which I'm really grateful for.
No kid. How old is he?
He's 2 years younger than me. He's a sophomore at Menlo right now.
He goes to Menlo as well?
Yeah.
Wow. So you live with your grandmother? Is that the way that works?
Well, now we live with our grandmother and also an aunt from my mother's side currently. And our parents frequently come to visit.
Nice. Nice. Do you miss your parents?
Yes, very much.
So your dad's also entrepreneur. Like, do you feel like you've been influenced by him in any way?
Yes, I've mostly tried to keep my own endeavors to myself, but he influences me a lot in terms of growing like good personality traits, and also talking to other people, and just dealing with certain situations that may be academically related or social aspects of my life, and dealing with like my friends, and also talking to different people, not just in the business side, but also mostly in the personality, how to deal with people, becoming a good person, that area.
So you were talking a little earlier about differences between Chinese young people and American young people that, as you've gotten to know them here. And the one thing you said so far was that you thought that the young people here in America maybe were more outgoing in class, more prone to ask questions, and maybe a little bit more willing to, I don't know how you worded that, but experiment or try innovative things. What are the other differences? Are young people in China, except for that, are young people in China and young people here in America the same, or are there other differences that you've noticed?
Well, I guess the younger people here are more willing to be open to each other, and they're more willing to make friends out of a group of strangers. Whereas in China, it's you really only talk to your close knit group of friends, and you don't really go out of your circle, just in terms of like social groups. Also, I guess people here are more, or kids here are a little bit more independent, in my opinion, because a lot of my friends back in China are kind of the only child, and they've been kind of pampered, I'd hate to say. But kids here, on the other hand, they're more able to take care of themselves, make themselves breakfast, and yeah.
How about the relationship between parents and children in China? Is that any different from what you've observed here so far, or is it pretty much the same?
Well, I'd say in China, kids are generally more obedient to what their parents say, and they have, if it's a no, they wouldn't continue arguing. They would just be like, oh, that's kind of sad. And if it's here, like some of my friends, like they might argue or like talk back to their parents, which is considered really rude in Beijing.
Not just in Beijing, probably.
Yeah,
all
or
of China.
just all of China. Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, are there any other young people from China at the Menlo School?
And not in my grade. Yeah.
Not in your grade.
Not in my grade. Menlo rarely accepts international applicants. They actually had like a small section on their website targeted towards international applicants.
Huh. Why is that? Do you know?
I don't. Maybe because they have like a different experience. Because I know that colleges are also more willing to accept domestic students compared to international students. Probably because children who live and grew up in America are more used to the culture and the way things go around here.
Do you miss China?
Yes, I do, but I try not to think about it because.
What
Yeah.
is it? What do you miss in particular about China?
Well, I miss my friends and I miss my parents the most. I definitely don't miss the pollution there. And I miss my dogs as well. And I also miss the feeling of living inside a city. I think that's because growing up in a city, it felt like there was always someone awake at night. And here it's a lot quieter.
So when you think about life in China and then life in California, and of course you've got a long life ahead of you, and you can probably live some of the time there and some of the time here. But as you think about life in both of those two places, what would you say are the 2 or 3 best things about life in China, and what are the 2 or 3 best things about life in California?
The 2 or 3 best things about life in California is, as a student, is the number of opportunities over here. Because in China, I never had opportunities such as competing in a robotics competition, which I did the past 2 years, or starting my own business, because that wouldn't be something kids do over there. And I guess the amount of opportunities here, like doing a math competition, doing numerous, like the girls' math prize at MIT, I was able to participate in that, which was really interesting. I like just opportunities I've never heard of, whether it's community service, whether it's STEM-related opportunities. It just, you wouldn't really find that in Beijing. But something that in China that I really miss, again, is the city atmosphere, and also family and friends, probably. Yeah.
How about food?
The food here is definitely healthier, in my opinion, especially in Palo Alto. There's a Whole Foods near my house, and I lived a healthier lifestyle here than in Beijing. And people here are more health conscious, and also you can actually go out and take a run, whereas in Beijing that doesn't really happen. You can't really enjoy as much nature, or like just take a walk when you feel like it, kind of thing. Yeah.
So how do you see your future? So obviously you plan to go to college here in the U.S. Where do you like to go?
I don't know yet. There's so many good options right now.
You don't have a favorite so far?
I have a few. I have a list that I generated. Definitely would like to go to college in the Bay Area.
Cool. And so what do you want to do after college? Do you see yourself going back to China eventually, or stay in the U.S.?
I'm not sure about going back to China. I'm probably going to stay in the U.S. And do something business related, whether it's entrepreneurship or like joining a big company. Because I'm still a student, I need to like test more opportunities out before I make up my mind.
How do you see your Chinese background kind of helping you as you kind of grow and try out these different opportunities? Have you seen it as an advantage or disadvantage?
I think I see it as an advantage. I feel like the more cultures I'm exposed to, the more advantage I have in dealing with different types of people in society. Definitely, it's allowed me to see like the different, many different personalities, and also what the two different cultures value in terms of, in like for example, like a business meeting or something.
So for your friends, you mentioned your friends many times. For your friends who stayed in Beijing, how do you think their life will differ from yours from this point onwards?
Well, I wish them the best, that's for sure. But a lot of my friends in Beijing, they wanted jobs as doctors, probably because of the culture there. Like they doctors and lawyers mostly. I don't know how that will play out yet, but a lot of them are coming to the U.S. for college, which is good. And whereas I think my friends here, they're choosing more diverse jobs, I guess, from many different areas. Like many different types of research.
So how do you think China can foster that spirit of entrepreneurship in its youth? What things would you think would be really cool if you were in China, you had the opportunities to do?
Well, definitely what would have been helpful for me would be like a list of opportunities for kids, because besides like after school tutoring programs or like a math Olympiad group or science Olympiad group, there wasn't many extracurriculars available. Oh, or piano. I left piano out. That was a huge thing. And I guess besides those things, there weren't like many different areas where students can explore their interests in, and the kind of curriculum was kind of rigid. I feel like so to change that, I think that students should be given a list of different opportunities, such as like a STEM course, or like a robotics club, or a student newspaper, etc. Those things.
How about the relationships between students and teachers in China compared to the relationships that you see between students and teachers at the Menlo School? Are they the same, or is there any difference?
Well, there's a difference. So between students and teachers in China, I guess students are more obedient, they're more quiet, they're less willing to reach out to a teacher, whereas over here, I can see during lunchtime there are students in the teacher's office almost every day and just talking to their teachers. An interesting story. Last summer, I was working at an orphanage in China, and over there I taught a summer English and math course, and I just realized how much I had changed since I moved to the U.S. Because teaching these orphans, they were kindergartners, by the way. They were already taught to sit straight, be obedient, don't bother the teacher, don't ask any questions, and just be quiet in a classroom, which I found kind of uncomfortable at first. So over the course, I kind of promoted their question asking through the use of like prizes. I bought them some stationery tools and like encouraged them to speak up and ask questions and earn the things they want and ask for things they deserve, kind of thing, and teach them like persistence, etc.
So I'm also curious, you miss your friends in China. That makes perfect sense to me. Have you built some nice new friendships here in California?
Yes, I have.
And is there any difference in friendships? Meaning, are friendships in China just like friendships in California, or is there any difference?
That part, I think, stayed the same. Making friends, I guess, is always like a pleasant experience, and you spend time together. They also have very similar hobbies, like, that part stayed the same.
That's the same. How's your little brother doing?
He's doing good. He recently, last night, we came up with a cool iPhone 7 case that would have like an earphone jack in it, and he's kind of like the engineer, very very STEM focused, and
so he's already figured out how to solve Apple's problem with the iPhone 7?
That's
great.
Yeah, we're planning to launch like a Kickstarter project on it. But we haven't really started that yet. But we're constantly thinking of new ideas, and it's really cool working with him. So
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Maybe I'll hold off getting my iPhone 7 until he solved the problem.
It's $1 billion opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that said, this is another episode of China 411. See you in the future.